Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Martech Q's podcast. Our guest for today is Tom Treanor. Tom is the global head of marketing at the enterprise CDP company, Treasure Data. He's responsible for driving strategy and looking into the marketing analytics and Martech functionality of the same. He's also responsible for authoring tremendous amounts of articles because of his immense and deep knowledge scape on Martech, marketing, and customer data. Welcome to the podcast, Tom.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to dive right into a very much customer-centric question. So we have seen that companies are rapidly transforming themselves into digital businesses in a race to build brand loyalty that leads to revenue. Data in this case plays an extremely key role to play to delivering experiences to the customers. While there is no shortage of data at the disposal of the companies, what do you think are some of the shortcomings that the companies face while trying to handle massive amounts of customer data? And would you suggest how do you suggest they overcome this trouble?
Right. Having a lot of data doesn't necessarily mean that they're managing it well. And that's one of the problems, is that so many companies have data within various silos, but they really haven't made the effort yet to pull that data together to unify the customer profiles. So I think one of the things that certain companies are doing during this time is really finalizing that effort to unify the customer profiles, often using a customer data platform, because then at that point they really understand when the customer is hitting the different touch points. They can really understand what the customer journey is. And I think one of the other things it can do is help them be more agile in their business models. As things shift, they can change business models more quickly if they actually have a good understanding of their customers.
That's right. And seeing the massive evolution of data and the way in which the customer and the consumer data have shaped up to finally derive the decision-making process for the marketers, where do you see the customer data platform in the next 3 to 5 years? Where do you see it heading? How and what significant changes can we expect in the data handling process from the marketer's end?
I think for one thing is that the customer data platforms are becoming more of a kind of ubiquitous thing, something that people need to have, because they realize that none of the other Martech tools really handle this functionality, and trying to add it as an afterthought to another technology is not really a recipe for success in a way that's scalable and in a way that's designed, kind of from the ground up to be, manage the data safely, securely, and effectively. So one is, I think it's something that all companies will have, because it's such a critical function to unify the customer data and to be able to see what that journey is. The other thing from the marketing team standpoint is the CDPs are getting easier to use for the marketers. So better, better UI and some, a lot of things are served up for them. So, for example, in our tool, we have segmentation, that's delivered by machine learning that's automated, so they can kind of use the out-of-the-box segmentation, or they can look at how the segmentation was derived and make minor adjustments to try their own flavor. But they can start with the one that's provided for them. So I think it's becoming ubiquitous, becoming easier to use for marketers, and I think those are two of the big trends.
Okay. And coming to personalization. Now, personalization has been one of the most complex, yet one of the most talked about topics in the lanes of B2B marketing. But the level of complexity of personalization have sometimes gotten the marketers so worried that we have seen several case studies wherein the marketers have totally left out the custom tailoring part of the personalization because it's that tedious. And with the current state of consumerism, wherein the consumers are so used to the experience that the e-commerce giants like Amazon gives them, it's like literally taking stuff out of the virtual racks. So in that state, where do you think the marketers can simplify and compartmentalize their personalization process and stop their entire engagement from derailing?
Right. I think a couple of things. One is, yeah, they don't have to personalize everything all the time. They have to figure out where are the most important channels to personalize in, and what are the most important things to tell that particular customer. So some things are maybe tied to their what vertical or industry they're in. So the personalization at that level could be something that's more relevant for their industry. In other cases, and both in consumer and B2B, is I think personalization based on not just the top of the funnel personalization, but actually for existing customers, et cetera. So in the B2C example, it might be, hey, you typically use these cosmetics every 5 weeks. Personalizing the message on here's the replenishment email, just click the button to do it, type of personalization. And in B2B, you can have other things like, oh, we notice you're not using this tool. Would you like to have a tutorial on how to use this tool? Or most of our top customers use the tool this way. Have you considered that? So personalizing based on things not just like the top of the funnel, but also on product usage or replenishment or things like that.
Yeah. And, taking away from the answer that you have given, since there are so many different type of analytics and data that each sector caters to, like with B2C, it's more like footnotes. With B2B, it can be anything ranging from Google Analytics of the website, or, for that matter, LinkedIn Analytics for your social media posts. There is so much data, like there are so many touch points and there are so many modes of representation of the data. So I really wanted to know, how do you think that we can aggregate this data from disparate sources for identity resolution to represent a common database for unification? How do you think, how difficult it is, or how much have we coped up this problem with CDP, and like what is the stature of the entire situation?
Yeah, I think we try to make it pretty easy. In fact, some of our implementations are like less than 60 days. So with the unification, one of the key points is the input. So companies like Treasure Data have, we have hundreds of pre-built connectors to make it easy to plug in a lot of the known tools. And then, of course, there are other tools that are not maybe we haven't experienced before, or that are legacy tool, or a tool that was developed in-house. So that just requires a kind of developing an approach to connecting separately from those pre-built connectors. So, one is just getting those connectors set up, and we make it to be fairly easy, like I said, because a lot of them are pre-built. Then we've unified the data of so many different customers that we're used to all the different gotchas and different issues that come up with that. So we work with the client to unify their data. And then there's the using that data either for BI or for activation. And again, we help them typically figure out a couple of use cases that they want to focus on. So if you look at that journey, it's doable, and it's a lot easier than doing it in-house from scratch from a new database, having never done it before, right? So I think using a pre-built tool is a lot faster in terms of time to market, and it's definitely doable. And like I said, if you do it in-house, that's where you might run into challenges that you would be expecting.
Yeah. And also, the main reason that we need the unification is because in between marketing, there are like several marketing functions that are operating. There is content marketing, social media marketing. So everybody has a different touch point in the entire journey. So unifying it really becomes like taxing at one point. But then, yeah, a good CDP really does the work. I really hope so.
Yeah, and then there's also data teams that are outside of marketing that really actually start to appreciate having this single source of truth on the customers for executive reporting, for analytics, different customer analytics. There's also other teams, customer experience or customer success teams that could start using. You can activate sales teams based on the data, especially for B2B. So there's actually so many rich ways that companies start to learn to use the data, that it's not just within the marketing function.
Yeah, right, correct. Also, since I read one of your articles, it was on customer experience. It was a very interesting article. And I came across a line, and I quote, the line was, "Creating a cycle of data-driven improvement is what differentiates the most successful retailers from their competitors." Can you talk a little bit about this?
Sure. So again, as we talked about, the foundation is actually having the data available.
Yeah.
So, one of the data-driven improvements that was recently done by a retailer is things like getting smart about understanding where the roadblocks are in the buying process, and then helping the customer get through those. So one of the examples is kind of a cart abandonment or browse abandonment project, where based on the activities that happen online, especially right now, we're in more of an online shopping versus the in-person shopping, you can run specific campaigns to improve that rate of cart abandonment or browse abandonment, and make significant ROI based on that. So that's one example of making improvements in a very specific area. But having all the data available, you can start to analyze different parts of your journey and find where the issues are, and improve those issues, either the root cause or add things like activations to help people through that.
That's correct. Also, I wanted to talk to you about CDP readiness a little bit. So we recently published a buyer's guide on Martech Cube. It's more on the lines of prerequisites to choosing a customer data platform, and it has treasure data ranking on #1, I guess. So on that note, while we have addressed a couple of things in representing CDP in totality, that it helps in providing a composite structure that really helps your consumer to leverage the data in a totally unified manner, we would really like to ask how difficult it would be or to judge whether the company is ready for a CDP or not. What would be the core factors to a confused company to tell them that your CDP readiness should be determined by these factors, that you're now ready for a CDP? Mm-hmm. And I know these are again bifurcated amongst enterprise and small scale, but still, I would just like to have a common list.
Let's see. So there's size of company for one thing, right? As you mentioned. So if you're a very, very small company, it's probably not the product for you. But yeah, for anywhere from medium companies all through enterprise, one of the things is, do you have a significant number of customer records that you have to manage? And that means that you have a large customer base versus a very small customer base. So if you know your 100 accounts that you always have to go after, and maybe you just add a few more accounts here and there, then you probably, you may not need a CDP. If you have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of records and customers, then that's starting to tell you that you probably need a CDP to keep that straight, because what happens is one of those, hundreds of thousands or millions will come in 3 or 4 different channels. And if each of your channels is siloed in managing that customer, you'll probably not recognize that the same customer has been coming through these different channels, and maybe the way that you're messaging them is not really appropriate, because you might be saying, hey, buy our new thing on special 10% off. Well, as in another channel, you might have recognized that they actually were an existing customer and are probably looking
Yeah.
for something different. So maybe
Yeah.
they're
Right.
looking for some support, or so. So yeah, if you have lots of records, if you have a team or a person that you could nominate to be the leader of an effort. So I'd say part of the checklist is having executive buy-in to the necessity of having a tool like this, and being able to designate a single person or team as the point person to lead it, because managing something that's cross-functional by nature, by committee, without a leader is kind of a recipe for disaster, because it's kind of like a compromise
Yeah.
project.
Yeah.
When you actually want, clear direction, and you're going to have to make some tough choices. So I think it's lots of records. You're a big enough company. You have executive buy-in, and then this is something that can be worked out before or after the selection, because we can help with that. But it's also some specific use cases in mind that you want to address. Versus just saying we want to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
It helps to have a couple use cases in mind. We want to improve our return on ad spend, or we want to improve some parts of, and then you can actually implement a CDP with those specific use cases in mind, as opposed to just implementing it and then saying, okay, what's next? What do we do? So specific ideas of what you can work with and like flesh those out. Let's see if I missed anything big. So I think those are some of the main things.
Yeah, I think it was very well explained. Also, coming to the relevancy of content, content basically in certain content marketing aspect, also any article or any piece of content that you put out, I think the immediate value that it has, the validation it has, is for 24 to maximum 36 hours. So in times like these, for a company like us, for a publication house like Martech, whose approach is totally dynamic, content-driven approach. So what tips would you suggest to get maximum value out of your piece of content, of your current piece of content?
Yeah, I think about that a lot because we create a lot of content. One is a lot of content is evergreen, and you should have as part of your content process, because 3 months or 6 months later, that content is still relevant for people. So it's just about getting the exposure via, for example, social media or your email newsletter. So typically in social media you can reshare. Other is to repurpose. So let's say you created an ebook, you can take portions of that out to create blog posts, or to create kind of social posts, etc. Or maybe you turn that ebook into a video tutorial. So it's repurposing. Another is to check the stats and content used but is older can be updated, republished. So you kind of maintain that ranking in traffic, but you actually want to give a better version. Or you can highlight where a new version is available on that particular post and say, hey, we've updated a second, newer version or related content on this other page, click over there. So you basically get two for the price of one. I'd say another one that I've been working on is, and I think it's interesting for you as well and for the audience, we created something called the CDP Academy, which is taking some of our best content and exactly for the purpose that you mentioned, because it has a shelf life, and actually discovery is the problem. So having a CDP Academy, we can actually provide our greatest hits by topic area to allow people to kind of go through a kind of curated journey to understand how a CDP works and what are the kind of like the important things to think about, what are the checklists, what are some kind of case studies and things like that. So I think it's thinking about how you can repackage your content into a different format that allows for rediscovery.
Yeah, it's like smaller pieces of a bigger puzzle, sort of a format.
Right.
Yeah. Coming to the current burning question about the pandemic, there have been opposing views on the state of marketing. So some people say that marketing is going to see a major slump, and others are saying that it will see a major revolution post this. So how do you think that pandemic is going to reshape the current state of marketing post we recover from it?
Yeah, I think it will go through a slump for a certain period of time as many companies scale back their marketing efforts, the marketing budget that they spend, as well as investment in new Martech tools. I think there will be a pullback, which is unfortunate. But when things start to heat up again, over time, I think you will see the hiring return and the investment return, because a lot of companies will have put things on the back burner for a year or some significant amount of time, and they're going to realize that both their campaigns as well as their infrastructure will need some updating to stay competitive.
Yeah.
So marketing is strategic, not just kind of commodity function. I think for companies that really want to stay ahead, they actually do have to invest, and so there will be that need for investment after that let's say it's a year-long kind of slowdown. So I think it'll come back, and it may take some time to work through the system where it gets back to marketing full employment, as well as investment at the same levels we used to, but I think it will eventually work its way back.
Yeah. So it'll see a slump and then it'll raise back. Raise like a phoenix.
Right, but it's not going to be immediate, right? It'll be a slow
graph.
phoenix.
Yeah. Nice. On a hopeful and rather positive note, I would really like you to consider sharing a quote that has always stayed with you, all your life, irrespective of any situation, something that you follow, or something that stuck by you from a book or a quote.
I don't have a quote handy, but I kind of made my own quote, which is always always keep your eye on the ball. And what that means is that when I'm working with someone on my team or someone on another team, and maybe we're debating the value of some project, should we invest in this? Should I have people on my team work on it? I always kind of come back to well, let's keep our eye on the ball here. What are we trying to do? What are these things actually helping us achieve our bigger goal? Because sometimes we spend so much time with all these tasks and efforts and projects, and some portion of them really are not helping to move the needle on our bigger goals. So that's why it's kind of always kind of keep in mind, keep your eye on the ball, because one of the things we all need to do is get more efficient and cut out things that are unnecessary. So if you can figure out that some things are really not lined up with the strategy, then you can cut them out. So keep your eye on the ball.
Keep your eye on the ball is the quote. Okay. That was rather inspiring and extremely positive. And this marks us to the end of our podcast. Thanks a lot for joining us for this wonderful session, Tom. We really look forward We really look forward to hosting you again. I mean, we have an interview with you, and we just want to keep doing more and more content with you, because we are such big fans at Martech, really. We always read all your articles and everything. So it was really lovely chatting with you. And I hope that you enjoyed this conversation as much as we have.
Oh, I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for hosting me, and thank you for the kind words. I appreciate you that you're reading all my articles, and looking forward to next time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tom. Please stay safe and stay vigilant. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. You too.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.